In this video I'm going to show you how to fix a broken nose on a surfboard. Start by separating the broken nose from the surfboard, in this case cutting around the logo. With a piece of 80 grit paper, start sanding underneath the fibers that you intend to preserve and around all the edges. A sanding block can also be used to clean all the edges. Cut off and clean all the loose fibers from the edges of the broken nose. Keep sanding until you have a perfect fit. Place your board on a 45-degree angle and with a 2-inch tape, form a barrier on the bottom of the repair to catch the drippings of the resin that's going to be used to glue the fiberglass carrying the logo back onto the board. Mix your resin with a little bit of white pigment and pour under the fibers. And with a mixing stick, make sure the resin is spread evenly. Using C-clamps and a mixing stick, push down the fiberglass against the foam. Once the resin is dry, remove clamps. Secure the board with masking tape against a chair, your sawhorse, or whatever you have to keep the board on an upward position. Mix your filler and place on top of the foam. Grab the nose and squeeze it down, making sure you're not leaving any gaps in between the two pieces. With a paper squeegee, remove all the excess of filler. Walk around the board and make sure the flow of the curve is correct. Once the resin is dried, start sanding around the repair, prepping for the new fibers. Using a hard pad with a 60 grit paper. I usually sand about 6 to 7 inches away from the opening. Keep on sanding until you start seeing the weave of the existing fibers. Be careful not to sand through the surfboard, causing more damage. Before placing the new fibers, make sure all the exposed foam is covered with the filler. With the filler that was left over, I mixed a little bit of blue to fill 2 small dings on the rail. Before your filler starts to dry, place your first layer of fiberglass. For this repair, I'm gonna use 2 layers of 4-ounce cloth on each side. Let it hang down 2 to 3 inches on each side of the rails. Pour your laminating resin and with a plastic squeegee, spread it out. When spreading the resin, make sure you go from the center out, keeping the cloth stretched out. Switch to a 3-inch brush or just keep using your plastic squeegee and fold down the cloth underneath the board. Flip the board and finish laminating the fibers. Once the resin is dry, apply the hot coat. Once hot coat's dry, using a soft pad with 100 grit sandpaper, start sanding the whole area. Avoid sanding the rails with a power sander. For the rails, I like to use the sanding block or just a folded piece of sandpaper. I also like to use an orbital sander to sand around the areas. Flip the board over and keep sanding the areas that were hot coated. Then switch to a sanding block with the 80 grit paper and do the rails. Then fold a 80 grit paper and keep on sanding by hand. Cut another piece of 4-ounce cloth, same size as the first one, and laminate the bottom of the board. Leave about 2 to 3 inches of cloth hanging down the rails, just like you did on the deck. Mix your laminating resin and start laminating the bottom. You can also use a plastic squeegee instead of a brush. Once the resin dries, apply the hot coat. Wait for the hot coat to dry and start sanding. With a soft pad again and 100 sandpaper, sand the entire area. Remembering that the rails will be sanded by hand with a sanding block or a folded piece of sandpaper. Every time I switch from a power tool to sanding by hand, I like to use a more coarsey sandpaper. In this case, I switched from 100 on power tools to 80 grit paper by hand. Then switch to a 180 sandpaper on a foam pad and sand the entire area, bottom and deck. Then switch to a 220 sandpaper and sand the entire area again, bottom and deck, preparing for the airbrushing. Mask all the areas on the logo that are close to the area to be airbrushed, exposing only the color that's gonna be sprayed on. Mix your acrylic color, in this case a white buttered color, which is the white faded on the surfboard, and spray on both sides. Using the same procedure, spray the blue and the black pin line. Remove tape and paper, let it dry, and apply the gloss finish over the entire repair, bottom and deck. Make sure to flip the board every 30 seconds until the resin starts to gel. This way you avoid the formation of drippings. Once the resin stops running, leave it alone. With a 220 sandpaper on a foam pad, start sanding the gloss. Then switch to a 320 and you can skip the 400 and go straight to the 600. Only sand the rails of the power sander when you have the 600 sandpaper. Wet sanding the rails by hand, it's also safer, especially when you have airbrushed the surfboard. Spread your polishing compound over the area of the repair and with a buffing pad on a power sander or a polisher, start polishing your repair. For better results, repeat this step 2 or 3 times more. And that's the conclusion of our video on how to repair a broken nose on a surfboard, preserving the logo. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned from it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.